The social changes that were caused by the market revolution in antebellum America. First, let's talk about the growth of cities. The number of Americans who lived in cities doubled during the market revolution. Those cities become centers of trade. More and more people move to those cities to get jobs related to that trade. There's also a growth in manufacturing, not yet an industrial revolution, but definitely a growth in manufacturing. Between 1820 and 1840, the number of people working in manufacturing increases by 8 times. In fact, by the end of the market revolution, the United States is second only to Great Britain in terms of industrial production. This was a real fear of Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson felt that America would be better served as a nation of yeoman farmers, independent people who could support themselves. That mass production, though, comes with the benefit of lower prices. So overall, we're going to see a decrease in prices of goods for Americans as a result of all that production. Increased industrialization, increased production, increased trade. The market revolution also leads to an increased need for professionals. As new towns are created across the country, as new centers of trade, those new towns need professionals. In other words, people with specialized knowledge and training. Among those new professionals are teachers, and teachers and being a teacher really becomes a more respected career and seen as a quasi member of that professional class as a result largely of this man, Horace Mann, a education advocate in the 1800s. As a result of his work and other reformers, the number of schools in America grows dramatically between 1825 and 1850. The number of elementary and secondary schools increases so much that there are normal schools built. For some reason, this was the name of schools that were designed to train teachers. And being a teacher goes from being seen as a woman's job to a job that is good, a good starting profession for an educated young man. So if you were looking to get into some other profession eventually, oftentimes those types of young men would start out working as a teacher. For example, lawyers. Many lawyers taught for a few years and then they would intern with an established attorney. There were no formal law schools at this time, so it was kind of like work as a teacher for a while, get your feet under you, and then it's kind of on the job training with an established lawyer, kind of like the old apprentice systems used by tradesmen before. It's very similar for doctors as well. Many of them started out as teachers, interned with a working doctor, and then set out on their own. Engineers, people who design many of the things needed for an increasingly industrial society. Engineers is another growing profession in the antebellum period. In fact, one of the largest or fastest growing and one of the largest by the Civil War. Effects on social classes, not many big changes to social classes. Many of the upper elites in society remain the same. Merchants are still going to be the wealthiest and most powerful throughout the North, planters the wealthiest and most powerful throughout the South. But we're also going to see, especially up north, some emerging factory owners who are able to amass enough money and power and influence that they're moving up into that elite class as well. Some women begin working in the market revolution. They begin working outside of the home. And this reflects a small change in society in those towns, and it's probably even more pronounced in larger cities. Nonetheless, the cult of domesticity is really going to take root in this antebellum time period. That has a lot to do with Catherine Beecher's A Treatise on Domestic Economy, written in 1841, in which she celebrated women's role as manager of the household and manager and caretaker of the children. The argument is made that a woman's sphere, a woman's place, was inside the home. In fact, it was argued that women needed training for domestic arts, the things that running a household and raising children required. They do not need training in professional skills. So this is going to kind of shut off some avenues to education to women for quite a while. Overall, the market revolution has very little effect on gender. Many of the laws of what are called coverture were still in place by the end of the antebellum period, by the time we get to the Civil War. That meant that for women, husbands controlled their finances. They were legally in control of their children and their property as well. In fact, when married, women basically lost their legal identity. And anything related to the law, their husbands, or if they weren't married, their brothers and fathers, did these things for them. And the same is viewed in politics. Women don't have a voice in politics, and it was said that men represented women in politics, just the same way they represented children. A few more notable legal problems for women: they could not serve on juries. They could not bring suit in court. In other words, they couldn't sue somebody without their husband's permission. They couldn't even sign legal documents. And finally, as we just mentioned, women did not have equal access to education. So, the antebellum period, during the market revolution, we're going to see the start of the women's movement, but very little change for women's place in society.